Good evening, everyone. I am George Brown, and you are watching Washington Line News Channel. Few modern American presidencies have generated as much controversy, polarization, and sustained debate as that of Donald J. Trump. From immigration and economic policy to democratic norms and America's global standing, Trump's policy agenda has been praised by supporters as disruptive and America first, while critics argue it has weakened institutions, intensified inequality, and damaged long-standing alliances. This report examines the core policy areas of the Trump administration, the arguments made in their defense, and the growing body of criticism. At the center of Trump's political identity lies immigration, his prioritized enforcement, border militarization, and restrictive asylum policies. Trump framed these measures as necessary for national security. Critics, however, argue the policies were symbolic, punitive, and legally questionable. Family separation at the border drew international condemnation. Asylum restrictions were repeatedly challenged in federal courts. Deportation policies were criticized for targeting long-settled families rather than violent offenders. Human rights organizations documented overcrowded detention centers and inadequate medical care, raising concerns that enforcement had eclipsed humanitarian obligations. Critics argue the administration failed to pursue comprehensive immigration reform, instead relying on executive actions that deepen division without solving systemic issues. Trump frequently pointed to stock market growth, deregulation, and tax cuts as evidence of economic success. The 2017 tax overhaul, a signature legislative victory, significantly reduced corporate tax rates. The majority of tax benefits flowed to corporations and high-income earners. Wage growth for middle and lower-income workers lagged behind inflation in several periods. While deregulation boosted certain industries, consumer advocates argue that rolling back environmental and financial protections increased long-term risk. Perhaps the most serious criticism of Trump's presidency centers on democratic governance. Trump repeatedly attacked the credibility of elections. Legal scholars warn that such rhetoric weakened public trust in democratic institutions. Critics argue that persistent claims of fraud, often unsupported by evidence, created a climate in which political outcomes were framed as illegitimate unless favorable to the president. This erosion of trust, analysts say, may prove more damaging than any single policy decision. Trump rejected traditional diplomatic frameworks in favor of unilateral action. While supporters applauded his skepticism of multilateral agreements, critics say the approach isolated the United States. Key concerns included withdrawal from international climate commitments, tense relationships with NATO allies, and trade wars that disrupted global supply chains. Former diplomats argue that unpredictability became a defining feature of U.S. foreign policy, weakening America's credibility and allowing geopolitical rivals to expand influence. Environmental policy under Trump marked a sharp reversal from prior administrations. Regulations on emissions, public land use, and environmental protections were rolled back in the name of economic growth. Environmental scientists and policy experts warn that rollbacks accelerated climate risks. Communities near industrial zones faced increased pollution. Long-term environmental costs were ignored in short-term economic calculations. Critics argue that the administration dismissed scientific consensus, framing climate action as an economic threat rather than an opportunity. Trump's approach to public health crises revealed tensions between political messaging and expert guidance. Public health officials and researchers criticized mixed messaging, undermining of scientific agencies, and the politicization of health measures. Analysts argue that inconsistent communication eroded public confidence at moments when clarity was most needed, leaving state and local governments to fill leadership gaps. Trump's frequent commentary on active investigations and legal proceedings drew warnings from former prosecutors and judges. Concerns included pressure on law enforcement institutions, use of pardons in politically sensitive cases, public criticism of judges overseeing cases involving allies. Legal experts emphasize that while presidents possess broad authority, the appearance of politicizing justice undermines confidence in equal application of the law. Beyond policy specifics, Trump's leadership style remains a focal point of criticism. His confrontational rhetoric energized supporters but alarmed critics who argue it normalized hostility in political discourse. Civil rights groups contend that racial and cultural tensions intensified. Minority communities felt increasingly targeted. Political disagreement was framed as moral conflict. Sociologists note that while polarization predates Trump, his communication style amplified divisions. making compromise increasingly rare. Trump's supporters argue that criticism reflects resistance to change. They credit him with challenging entrenched political elites, prioritizing national interests, and disrupting what they view as ineffective governance norms. They contend that media coverage is disproportionately negative. Economic and security policies reflected voter mandates. Institutional pushback proved the need for reform.
These arguments remain central to Trump's political base and help explain his continued influence.
Donald Trump's presidency reshaped American politics in profound ways. Supporters see a leader who confronted institutions and broke norms. Critics see a presidency that strained democracy, deepened inequality, and weakened global leadership. As historians and voters continue to assess the long-term consequences, one conclusion is already clear. Trump's policies and leadership style will remain a defining and divisive chapter in American history, debated not only for what they achieved,
but for how they altered the boundaries of political power itself.